Welcome to the speaker series on a shot glass of recovery.
Yeah. You get a house, you get a car, then you start thinking that's all you are, but you don't know the truth. So let me spell it out for you. Now I got your attention, now there's a start. Now sit and listen to my favorite part. Life's been giving us some clues. The answer lies inside of your.
I am Lisa, the host of A Shot Glass of Recovery, and this is our speaker series. Let's sit back and get ready for some more experience, strength, and hope.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Andrea, and I'm an alcoholic. Thank you for the opportunity to share my experience, strength, and hope. This is only the second time I've shared my story, and the first was not that long ago at one of our own members' 1-year milestone. So when I was asked to do it, I wondered, what do I have to share in those three things? Experience. I have 30 years of a drinking career, almost 5 in recovery. Strength, I've been told I have quite a lot of, but I've learned not quite as much as people think. And I tend to love being the underdog, so that's okay. And as for hope, I was thinking about that one. The truth is that some days it is still buried under self-pity. But if I look closely and if I'm doing the right thing and I'm with the right people, I can find it. And I was also very fortunate to grow up with a mother who had very strong faith and as a result, strong hope. I was taught that faith is believing in something you can't see. And I certainly couldn't see a life ahead of me without alcohol. But here I am, and here is where I hope to stay. And I learned that the faith and the hope, you can't borrow someone else's. It has to be your own. So I know that speaking here this morning is as much about helping others as it is myself. And to be honest, I was nervous to sit down and write my story recently because I'd never done it. I actually forgot how many decades I was drinking. I thought it was only 2, but it was 3. I was probably scared to face my past, face myself. But I found that once I sat down and started thinking about it, the anticipation is a lot worse than actually doing it, like a lot of things, like going to the dentist. So I started to see that the ups and the downs and the wins and the failures and the good and the bad were not in the ratio that I thought, and the good definitely outwinning the bad. And that's partly because I'm here, mostly because I'm here. I like speaking about the good as a cliche, what I was taught, like good things come in threes. And in my case, the good threes are my 3 sons, 21, 17, and 16 years old. 3 legacies of AA that I'm learning about: recovery, unity, and service. And when I look at my life, I see 3 was an important number because I consider 3 to be the number of times that I actually came into the world. And the first one was when I was born, August 31st. That's my birthday. I love my birthday. Second time was when I was brought into my family after being placed for adoption in the Catholic Children's Aid. And the third time I was born, I would say, was when I found these rooms of AA. So in 1971, I was born to a single mother who decided that I could have a better shot at life with someone else. And so she gave me that gift. And like the rest of my other 3 siblings who were also adopted, I was put in this wonderful family. I was lucky. I had 2 older brothers, an older sister that became a best friend. And our lives would be what many would consider to be privileged. And I had everything a little girl could wish for. In fact, I had everything that most adults would wish for. Again, lucky. And people would look at my life from the outside and they'd make a very fast decision that I had everything. And from that external perspective, I absolutely did. But the greatest thing I had was my family. We had abundant love, unwavering faith, strong work ethic, resilience, and commitment. And We had the kind of support that saw each other through everything. Unexpected pregnancies, prison, mental health facilities. We had, cancer and illness, and because of me, alcoholism. Lucky again. And having been put in several foster homes before I found my family, I would say delicate was a nice way of putting it. And my mother, who I'm very close to, would joke a lot and say, I was the fourth. So she'd say, if you were my first, you probably would have been my last because I didn't sleep, I didn't eat, I didn't know how to self soothe. I was more than a handful. I think I was the type of baby that people are like, no, but she was the perfect mother and she loved babies and she was a wizard with difficult babies. And that was me. So 50 years later, what I learned that what I really was restless, irritable, and discontent. I still am for the most part, but now I learned how to deal with it in a much more functional way and worlds apart from the way I used to know. So as much as people did notice everything I had in my life, what they failed to see was what I hid so well on the inside and I kept very neatly tucked inside. Plus, I found a way to deal with that early on. So it made up for all the fear, insecurities, and anxieties, low self-esteem, everything I suffered from and made go away. Because in my case, it was love at first sip with alcohol. And in fact, I probably had my first sip of alcohol when I was about 10 years old. I was at a New Year's Eve party with family and friends, and one of the girls, a little bit older than me, we noticed, we thought it might be fun to empty all those half finished champagne glasses after 12 o'clock. And so when everyone left the grown up table, we started finishing those. And it turns out that small sips can in turn add up to quite a lot. That was really turning point because I knew what was in that glass, even though it wasn't mine, was mine because it gave me that feeling of being different, of being better. And, I was uncomfortable in my own skin, similar to how a lot of people feel. And that made it all go away. And I was having time of my life. And a couple of years later, I would say it was the same scenario at a family thing with a larger group. And again, I finished empty champagne glasses and wine glasses. I thought, how could they be so wasteful? I'd wonder. But before long, that and other tools that would hide how much I was drinking would come to serve me well and hide what I was drinking. So that was really when I would say alcohol became what I consider almost like an illicit lover. And I was sneaking him in whenever and wherever I could. I even snuck him into my juice box in grade 7, my Catholic school. And I remember my classmates didn't believe me. So one of them squeezed the juice box and red wine came out and it stunk so badly. And I was so worried that the nuns would smell it. They didn't, so wiped it up, got away with it. And I remember laughing, singing UB40's Red, Red Wine with these girls and just, thinking I was super cool. And that was the beginning of hiding what probably was my most meaningful, significant other. I learned pretty quickly that no matter how much I wanted him, we would have to be apart for many obvious reasons. And that was difficult because I learned quickly also when I couldn't have him, he was all that I could think about. And each separation just got harder. And the more anyone would say that he wasn't right for me, or God forbid that he was downright bad for me, the more I wanted him. And the more I made myself available to him, which guess what? Yeah, that brought us even closer. So close that we succeeded something that many people fail at in the next chapter of my life, which was long distance relationships. That was not going to be a problem because I just figured, no, we're going together. And when I moved away from 18, went to university, he came with me. And it turned out that seemed like a pretty good decision because there were a ton of friends that had relationships just like mine, long-term relationships with alcohol. Some were acquaintances, others just meeting each other. I'd say flirting. Some were falling in love. And for a while, it seemed perfect. And we fit in until we didn't, because what I started to notice was that other people's relationships were different. They would end, they would break up, and they would know when to call it quits. I didn't. It turns out that three's a crowd in a dorm room made for two at university. And my roommate had, for so many valid reasons, had enough of me. Alcohol crowded out my common sense, my respect of other people and their property, and I would say my basic human decency and kindness. I was a different person when I drank. And my drinking changed from weekends only to an earlier weekend creeping in, starting on Thursdays, then adding pub night on Tuesdays, and then obviously to end every day ending in Y, like many people can relate. So I drank every day and for every imaginable reason. Pre-exam jitters, post-exam celebrations, boredom, romance, football games, dates, sex, clubs, dancing, partying, studying, sleeping, you name it. I had a reason, and I was not and am not proud of those days away at university. Waking up, not knowing whose bed I was in, not remembering where my car was the next morning, if I did not have the common sense not to drive, which was often, having to find my car the next morning, or sorry, I said that part, having to walk to the bar where I often left an open tab with the credit card. I have to go pick it up the next morning. And, along that walk of shame, I found I was picking up pieces of my self-respect and my dignity. And it didn't end there because the night just haunted me. I was a blackout drinker. I would have flashbulb memories of bad situations, wrong decisions, bad company I made, only to regret it the next day and for longer. And each time it happened, each time I made myself a promise that I would never do it again. And every promise was broken. So, because I managed to walk away from all of that, or as I say, stumbled away from university with a degree, I consider myself pretty functional. And I came back to Toronto. I thought I had this newfound sense of accomplishment and adulthood, and I'm going to get a job and I'm going to live in my own place. And it's a new page, a new chapter. But it turned out, and I learned very quickly, I was reading from the same book and the same love story I couldn't put down. So I stayed in my relationship with alcohol, and I was convinced we were pretty much in it for the long haul. And that I tried to rationalize it. I thought, okay, I'm at a new stage in my life. This can be a new kind of relationship with alcohol. I'm more mature, I'm more sophisticated, and my relationship with alcohol can be too. It remained as it was. It was like this love-hate relationship. There was, I say, so much turbulence. I was stuck in this holding pattern and I could see the runway, but I couldn't land because it was kind of nice to have my head in the clouds and looking at life from 30,000 feet was okay. That was safer than getting closer to it. Eventually, though, you get issues like fuel and a plane's got to land. So I landed in the business world after that. And turns out that world quite as easily I fit into very nicely. There were a lot of people that had similar relationships with alcohol. I tried to keep up with people. It was a very male-dominated industry. I ended up out-drinking many people. And I justified it once again by thinking it was work and it was okay. So I was a grown-up. And the reality was I was really just playing make-believe the whole time. I wasn't grown up at all. I was immature and I was just a kid still. Finally, I thought for sure I'd grown up because I got married and I had fallen in love for the first time, for real this time, with a real person. And he was different than me. He was grounded. He was structured. He was stable. He didn't even really drink. I finally found someone I loved more than alcohol, or so I thought. I can remember not remembering my bridal shower, vaguely remembering the end of my wedding. And the truth is that a month into being married, I was in an outpatient treatment center. So I remember sitting there wondering, what was going on because people were talking about taking drugs that would make them vomit when they drank. Another man was talking about how life was so different and the grass was so green and the sky was so blue. And now he could really see the colors of the world. And I couldn't imagine that. I thought, my life only comes to life when I'm drinking. My life becomes technicolor when I'm drinking. There's no way. And, I can't say that I thought it was all wrong and couldn't fully believe it because I always had that voice inside my head that I continued to ignore. And then I'd look at these people around me in this outpatient treatment center. I'd say, I'm not that bad. I'm not like them. Then I looked at myself and again, thought I'm functioning. I'm okay. I'm evolving. I'm pregnant 4 times. So I did the math and I'm like, oh, for 36 months, I didn't drink. I'm sober for 3 years. But then I thought there's all the time in between the pregnancies and then there's all the time after. And that added up to a lot of time. So it wasn't the great accomplishment that I thought it was. And it turns out that old habits are very, very hard to break, no matter what stage you're in and how grown up you think you are. So I was juggling, trying to find balance, coping. And at the same time, I was just hardening, kind of disappearing. So I turned to alcohol, which was very familiar. And I'd be the drunk mom driving around the block with my kids playing music, dancing out the sunroof. I'd be the mom picking up dinner 20 minutes early at the restaurant so I could have a couple glasses of wine. I'd be the mom working on a work presentation, staying hours late, even though I was at a restaurant drinking with my colleagues. I was even the mom who was asleep in the backyard because I fumbled too much to get my front key in the door. Not my proudest moments for sure. And, there's so many moments. A couple I highlighted were not being proud when I'd go to a restaurant with my family. Of course, it had to have a liquor license. And then the server asking if I was having the 6 ounce or the 9 ounce. And my husband would say, she'll have the 12 ounce. And my kids would laugh. I asked my middle son one day if he could go a week without having pop, because I never really grew up with soda or pop. And he said, can you go a week without wine? And that spoke volumes to me. So I started to listen to that voice that got louder and louder and the hunch that got bigger. And I started to pay attention. I started to do online tests, which, pretty much tell you, yes, before you even start the quiz, you do have a drinking problem if you're here doing this survey. And I did. 5 years into my marriage, I decided to look up AA, and I didn't know anyone who went there, and I knew very little about it other than what I had seen in movies or on TV. And there was one right around the corner from my house. So it was very convenient, maybe too convenient, I thought. And I remember being so nervous that I would see someone I recognized in there, thinking that I was all that, even though the program had anonymity. And then I handed my youngest son to my husband. And I said, look after them. I'm heading over there. And I got the courage to walk in. So there was typical church basement. There were cookies and coffee, which I remember loving because that was my go-to without alcohol. And, there was some familiarity, even the God part, because God was part of my life. That word was part for decades. Well, actually for my whole life. My mother introduced God to me very, very early. That wasn't the hard part. The hard word for me was alcoholic. And so I didn't use it. I said 15 words, I remember. I said, hello, my name is Andrea, and I think I have a problem with alcohol. And no one counted me out. That was okay, if that's all I could say. And at the very end, this lady said, keep coming back. We know you're an alkie. And I thought, F you, and I am never coming back here. And so I didn't for 15 years. I kept drinking. When I did go back, it wasn't to stop drinking because eventually I figured that part out. But that's not why I went to AA. And that's my spoiler alert. I didn't go to AA to stop drinking. That part was done. So before I got here, I tried, as many do, a million different ways to stop drinking. And Sometimes I think I stopped on my first try, but that's not really entirely true because there were a lot of times I tried which no one knew about. Like I'd go to a week-long conference in Vegas, get obliterated, and I couldn't drink for about a month when I got back. And then there was a time when I had a prescription, couldn't drink for about a week. And my husband said, there's no way you can do that. And so, my mindset's like, tell me what I can't do and I'll show you I can do it. So I did that, no problem. And then I would do dry Januaries, sober October. Then I'd take it for like 60-day stretch, 90-day stretch, and so on and so on. And then there was COVID. And then my father died. That's when I decided to stop. I decided I had no room for alcohol in my life and that I had to grow up. So I did everything except AA, of course, because, it's the last thing I would try. I joined an online group. I met with a woman from the UK who had a great program. I had a sober pen pal. I ordered sober jewelry. I did sober yoga. I did a recovery sober writing course, and so on for 3 years. And I would say they all did their part. And they got me all a little bit further until I got as far as I could go. And then over time, what I found that was my world really started to shrink. And it got smaller than COVID small. And, my social circle became people in recovery. And that was fine by me until it wasn't, because then it got even smaller. It seemed like all at once, I lost my career. I lost my 20-year marriage, a 30-year friendship, family relationships, and as a result, a huge part of my identity with all of those things. And for what felt like the very first time in a long time, I felt alone, not lonely. Lonely was what I felt in my marriage. Lonely was what I felt in this corporate career. Mostly men, no reflection of the men here. They're different, but they didn't value me or my contributions. So alone wasn't the problem. I never feared being alone. I loved being alone. But then years later, once I got here, I learned that it's not just about enjoying being in solitude or my company or being content or peace with myself. It's called isolating. And that's exactly what I was doing. And it was a miracle that I did not start drinking. I started to notice other addictions kicking in. And then, lucky for me, recovery can be a small place, small world. So someone told me about a 12-step program for another issue. They told a friend, I told a friend, 2 friends, that kind of, word of mouth. And it's a little bit sad because I could count my friends on one hand. And they were all in these rooms and on these screens. But now I don't think it's so sad. I started to hear stories about people relapsing after 15, 20 years. And I thought, who am I to think that I'm not going to start drinking again? Like I said, I just stopped drinking. I was the same person. I started to think when I heard them and I started to get attracted to the program, I was like, maybe, just maybe all these things didn't fall away from my life as the curse that I think it is. Maybe it's a gift. Maybe it's designed exactly how it's supposed to be. So I can focus on this, get my shit together, which is a life's work I've discovered. Sorry, I swear. So I got curious. I started exploring online meetings. And then I heard people talking about in-person meetings and this hybrid practice. And I was like, oh, that's cool. Like supplement their online meetings. And I thought maybe I'll try that. I knew I needed connection, so I kept trying. And timing was everything. So I was like, I will go to an in-person AA meeting again. So I went. Nobody called me an alcoholic this time. Because, if anyone's going to call me an alcoholic, it's going to be me. It's like calling someone's baby ugly. You can't do it, right? So I went back. I sat in the back every time, nervous every time. Then I started to get a little braver and I'd linger. People would talk to me. They'd ask me which home group I was in. And I was a bit of a philanderer. I didn't have a home group for a very long time. And I thought maybe there is such a thing as slutty sobriety, which is probably the category that mine falls into because I can't commit. I was always afraid there would be something better somewhere else. And I continued to go to new meetings I'd never been to before, and they were all the same, but different, as people might know if they've tried that. Some I felt absolutely nothing, and then others I would hold hands with strangers and just cry. I couldn't understand the program or the people. I couldn't understand why they were so nice to me. And I remember one day I walked I walked in, I was kind of looking around, a lady was like making a beeline for me, and I thought, "Oh my God, I'm in trouble. What did I do?" She said, "Will you come in the women's room and read with us?" And I was like, "Oh yeah, sure." So I joined her. I always read out loud with people, but for the most part I stayed quiet and I didn't ask a lot of questions. Finally, I think I got a little bit braver because I asked someone one day to be my sponsor, and she said no. Then I asked another person. She also said no. And then back to my good things coming in threes. I tried again. And this woman said, "I'll have to consult my higher power and get back to you." I thought, "Oh, what is this? These people are insane. Can't she make her own decisions? She's got to consult her higher power. What is that?" So the bottom line was that I felt rejected and I hated it. That's like my kryptonite. I kept going though. I'd get lots of people's phone numbers. I never called them. I don't know why I was so afraid. I kept exploring meetings and eventually I found one that felt good and I kept going back. But I hated routine and I hated structure, even though I knew that I needed it. I found a sponsor finally and did the steps with her and I saw what it could do. But I wasn't easy. I'm still not easy. And I remember now I know better, but I'd call her to complain and she'd ask me if I prayed about it. And I'd be like, "I want to hang up on this lady. I want to hang up on her." At least, several times. I thought about firing her. If there was such a thing, I would try not to answer the phone when she'd call me. I think she knew my tactics. It was like she was God speaking to me because she just knew I was like avoiding her, dodging her, and she called me out on it. She called me and asked me if I was still in the program, and I'd be like cursing her name. And then I would take the nudge she gave me, finish the step, and go on. But I was very slow. I'm still very slow, and I'm okay with that. I I knew it was so different than the way and the pace I lived my life at, which was filling every minute of every day until I broke. It took me 15 years to do step one. That can't be a record, but like for me, that doesn't even sound possible. But finally, after 15 years, I knew I would never drink like a normal person, and I didn't want to. And that's a miracle. I was walking in the forest. Before that, I always had that voice in my head. Like I'm faking it. And I'm going to drink normal, like normal people. I just have to do this for now. I never said it was for life because I couldn't say that. So, oh yeah, I forgot. I was listening to Joe and Charlie. I think they had a big part of it too because they seemed kind of normal to me. I'm like, "Oh, okay, these guys I can listen to. They're speaking my language. I get it." But there's not a part of me today that pretends it can ever go back to that. And I'm also okay with that. So this is the meeting I found. This is my home group that I come to most days. I'm often late, but I still come. And I try to do a little more and do better each day. I found a big book buddy at a women's meeting one time, and she FaceTimed me every Monday night and read the book with me. And I thought, this is insane. Who does this? Who does this for people for free? And then it didn't take me long to figure out, is it an alcoholic? An alcoholic does this. And I am one of them. So it shouldn't have come as a surprise. And I shouldn't have fought it so hard, but I did because there were so many red flags along the way. My mother always was saying to me, "Can we please get a photo without you having a glass of wine in your hand? Please, can you put the wine down?" There's a flag. There were friends who took a chance being honest with me and told me they thought I was drinking too much, and I just brushed it off. I discovered in my 20s that my biological father was an alcoholic, but I thought I was not him. I was stronger than that. There was my doctor telling me I was self-medicating to treat anxiety and panic disorder, and then an adult diagnosis of ADHD after my son's, which helped me understand why I was using alcohol to shut up my brain, calm my nervous system. And then last but not least, just at my very core, the biggest flag that I just like push down, like that beach ball that's like trying to burst out of water. I couldn't keep it down. I didn't really understand that place because I was numb. And even after I stopped drinking, it wasn't a place I could find very easily, that core part inside of me, my heart. So, a lot of people think surely I'm changing after I'm drinking. They were surprised I was going to AA. But what probably many of you know that I didn't was that when I joined the program, stopping drinking wasn't the answer. Without alcohol, I was the exact same person. I was that baby, again, restless, irritable, and discontent. And drinking was a symptom of something else missing in my life. I didn't know that for a long time. I was missing something spiritual and constantly trying to fill it. I remember hearing an author who was in a 12-step program speak. And she said, someone asked her about her practice. They said, "What do you do?" And she said, "I make my practice," she said, "I make it feel so full that there is no room for wanting anything else." That's probably the first time I thought, I want that. I don't want to want. Usually, I want two things that I don't need and things that are bad for me. I remember listening to one of those YouTube speakers, those AA speakers. He again seemed like really normal. He said, "Oh, there's two types of people, like the people that get in a brand new car and they're happy for years, and then the people that get a new car and then after a few months or a few weeks, they see the car in another color or a newer model and they're like, I want that car." I'm like, yeah, that's me. I want the new shiny thing. So I started learning about emotional sobriety, and I guess that's what I really wanted. And that is something I am still working on. I want to have enough inner peace that whatever goes on around me, I can look within and have that serenity. I don't think I'm even close to that yet, but I know it's what I want, and that's a start. I've learned a lot of things in this program. First one always makes me cry and it makes me laugh too, but I've learned that I don't get on my knees to find God. I get on my knees to find me. Sometimes that's prayer, sometimes it's yoga, sometimes it's meditation. I was spending my life getting physically fit and intellectually fit, totally ignoring getting spiritually fit. I'd never heard of that. And then I thought, that's cool. That's one I haven't tried. Again, chasing the new thing, not knowing exactly that was the most important thing. And I had it all in the wrong order. I had totally lost myself. And then I remember hearing someone saying with the word recovery, you have recover and you can find something that you've lost. And I also wanted that. I've learned my best to accept people for who and what they are. And probably my very favorite line in the big book is that there's a bit of good in the worst of us and a bit of bad in the best of us. And when I came, I thought, maybe I'm not so bad. I've learned that I didn't think I'd cry, but oh my God. Okay. I've learned that whatever I put ahead of my recovery, I risk losing. I'm not afraid to say that to other people that I care about. Not embarrassed. I would have been embarrassed before. I don't give a shit anymore. I've learned to let go of guilt and shame. I admit I would not have wanted to travel a different road with different people. That includes everybody I meet on the way, no matter how briefly or long they stay in my life. They've done something. I am baffled still to find this kind of belonging in a group that's described as people who would normally not mix. Baffled. I spent 25 in an industry that said they built belonging. They built bullshit. I didn't build belonging. I've learned not to want my sobriety one day sooner than it came. I used to see younger people and I'd be like, fuck, wish I came that age. Now I don't. I trust that everything and everyone happens in their own time and that it is not our time, it's God's time. And now I understand the simplicity and the power in one day at a time. That's so, oh my God, that's so spacious and like just miraculous to someone like me who knew one pace. I can be right here, right now. I've spent these last 5 years learning things that far surpass anything I ever learned in school or from friends or work or family. And I had an amazing family. For a long time, I said I didn't know who I was, but I'm finding out. I thought I would find answers in personality assessments, strength finders, and aptitude tests. And every time I would do those things, the three prominent things that kept popping up, my values would be freedom, creativity, and adventure. I never imagined that for myself. I never found them. I thought freedom was like living this bohemian lifestyle, like just not tied down to anything or anyone, not knowing I would never be free if I continued living the way I was living. I would never find adventure. I would never tap into my creativity. So thank God I found it here. I thought I had to drink, to laugh, to connect, to cry, and to cope. I don't need it for any of them. I do them all better now, sober. And everything that I need is right here. And like each one of these squares. That's where I'm supposed to end, but I have a little time. Do I have a little time? I don't know what the time is. 59. What time is it? 7:51. I guess I have a couple minutes. I recently spoke to a woman. I said this the other day at a meeting, who was looking for a sponsor. And she asked me this question like, but why should I go to meetings? Like, I don't get it. What do I get? Like, and when I started to think and tell her why I go to meetings, I was blown away, racking off what was in my heart and my head, because I still take it for granted. Like I use the analogy, it's like writing something down versus saying it out loud. When I said it out loud, it really gave me recognition and appreciation. And like I said, where else can you go that you can be you and it's safe and people don't judge you and you hear other people's stories and you think, oh my God, yeah, like I've totally done that. Or like my thinking is so distorted. Pharmacist texted me the other day, your prescription's ready to pick up. I'm like, I'll come Monday if that's okay. I responded. She wrote back, that's fine. And I'm like, what a bitch. I'm like, I'm hearing, that's fine, Andrea. Come when it's convenient for you. I'm like, no, okay. I think she really just meant like, it's fine. It's okay. Come Monday. But no, I have a whole story in my head. I'm like, who understands that? I'm like, well, I think most people here understand it. That's why I keep coming. I'm like, I just have a story around everything. But now I can rewrite the story. Doesn't have to be the same old story. And when I have that distorted thinking, I could check it here. So, when I talked to that woman that's looking for a sponsor, I talked about the importance of finally realizing I was powerless. I talked about asking for help and learning that I do not run the show. I don't know. I never thought of myself as a control freak, but last week I cried. I thought I was actually praying and crying, and I thought it was tears of relief. I don't want to be in control. I'm not good at it. Way too much responsibility for someone like me. So let someone better do it. They know what they're doing. I sure as hell don't. The past 50 years will tell you that. So my hope is that someone else greater than me takes charge and takes me to different places than I've already known and to different people that make my life a bigger, brighter place. So thank you to all of you for being part of my sobriety and for continuing to show up. Thank you.
Just a quick reminder to subscribe, like, or follow if you like the show on any of your favorite listening platforms. If you like the speakers and other content on the podcast, please show us some love by leaving a review and consider making a PayPal contribution to help keep the show going at paypal.me/a shot glass of recovery. Every dollar makes a difference, and we thank you. Our speakers come from my AA home group, AA Solution Seekers. We meet every day at 7 a.m., so pop in sometime and say hello. Until next time, thanks for joining me on A Shot Glass of Recovery.
Everything you do, the answer lies inside you.